Rosa Esperanza Delgado's weathered hands rested gently on the steering wheel of her modest sedan, her eyes fixed on the gleaming glass facade of Sierra Motors. The morning sun bounced off the building's sleek exterior, creating a dazzling display that seemed to beckon her forward. At 62, Rosa carried herself with quiet dignity. Today, she had dressed with particular care, her colorful embroidered blouse with intricate patterns that told stories of her heritage, a long flowing skirt in deep burgundy, and the silver earrings her mother had given her before leaving Mexico 5 decades ago. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back into a neat bun, a few tendrils framing her face, which bore the gentle lines of a life lived with purpose and perseverance. This visit wasn't impulsive. It represented the culmination of a dream that had germinated in her heart since she was a young girl watching her father tinker with engine parts in their small garage in Arizona. "One day, Mia," he would tell her while wiping grease from his hands, "one day we will drive something beautiful, something that purrs like a contented cat when you turn the key." The memory brought a smile to Rosa's lips as she gathered her courage and stepped out of her car. Her father had never lived to see that dream realized, but today, Rosa would. The dealership's interior was Arctic in both temperature and atmosphere. The air conditioning hummed aggressively, creating an environment that felt deliberately unwelcoming to those not wrapped in designer clothing or the invisible cloak of obvious wealth. Rosa's colorful attire stood in stark contrast to the dealership's monochromatic design scheme. As she crossed the threshold, conversations paused and heads turned in her direction. The salespeople, mostly young men in tailored suits, exchanged glances that communicated volumes without a single word spoken. Martin Knox, the sales manager, noticed her immediately. At 35, he had cultivated a reputation for knowing which customers were worth his time and which weren't. His gaze swept over Rosa, taking in her embroidered blouse, her modest handbag, the simple gold wedding band on her finger, and made his assessment in seconds. From across the showroom, Elena Vega watched the scene unfold. As the dealership's newest employee and one of the few Latina women on staff, she recognized something in Rosa that the others didn't, a quiet determination that reminded her of her own grandmother. Rosa moved slowly through the showroom, her eyes drawn to a midnight blue luxury sedan with a sleek profile. She approached it with reverence, her fingertips hovering just above its polished surface, not quite touching, as if she were approaching an altar. "It's beautiful," she whispered to herself in Spanish. The car represented everything her father had dreamed of: elegance, craftsmanship, the culmination of hard work and patience. Martin approached, his footsteps deliberately loud on the polished floor. "Can I help you find something?" he asked, his tone suggesting that what she was looking for couldn't possibly be found here. Rosa turned to him, her smile warm and genuine. "Yes, I'm interested in learning more about this model. The performance specs are impressive, and I've heard the safety features are exceptional." Martin's eyebrows rose slightly, surprise momentarily replacing his condescension. "This one?" he asked, gesturing toward the luxury sedan. "The Avalon Elite starts at $85,000. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable looking at our economy models." Rosa's smile didn't waver, though something in her eyes hardened. "I'm quite comfortable right here, thank you. I'd like to see a brochure with the detailed specifications." Part 3. The escalation. By now, Jason Kent, the general manager, had noticed the interaction. At 50, Jason prided himself on running a premium establishment, which to him meant catering to a certain clientele. He approached with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Is there an issue here?" he asked. Martin, though his gaze remained fixed on Rosa. "No issue," Martin replied with a smirk. "Just helping our visitor find something more suitable." Rosa straightened her shoulders, her 5'4" frame suddenly appearing taller. "I'm not a visitor," she said calmly. "I'm a customer, and I'd like to see the information on this car." Jason exchanged glances with Martin before saying, "Ma'am, this is a luxury dealership. Our vehicles represent significant investments. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable. I know exactly what your vehicles represent." Rosa interrupted, her voice firm but not raised. "I'm not asking for a discount or special treatment. I'm asking for the same respect and service you'd offer any other customer." Martin snorted. "Look, we have real customers waiting, people who can actually afford what we sell." Around them, other wealthy patrons browsed the showroom, some pretending not to listen while others openly stared at the unfolding scene. A couple near the front desk whispered to each other, the woman's diamond rings catching the light as she gestured toward Rosa. Elena, who had been organizing pamphlets nearby, felt her cheeks burn with second-hand embarrassment and anger. She took a step forward, then hesitated, her job security warring with her sense of justice. "I believe I've made myself clear," Rosa said, her accent becoming slightly more pronounced as her patience waned. "I would like to see the information on this vehicle." Jason's practiced smile disappeared. "And I believe we've made ourselves clear. We don't appreciate people wasting our time. This is a place of business, not a museum. Is that right?" Rosa's voice was quiet, but carried an undercurrent of steel. "And how exactly have you determined that I'm wasting your time?" "By looking at me, by judging my clothes, my accent, my age." Martin stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, lady, we've dealt with people like you before. You come in, take up our time, ask 1,000 questions, and then leave without buying anything. We're not here to fulfill your fantasies." The words hung in the air like poison. Rosa's face remained composed, but her eyes revealed a lifetime of similar encounters, moments when she'd been judged, dismissed, underestimated. She reached into her handbag and pulled out her phone. "I see," she said simply. Jason, interpreting her quiet dignity as defeat, signaled to the security guard. "Please escort this woman out. She's disturbing our customers." The security guard, a young man named Miguel, approached reluctantly. Something about the situation felt wrong to him, but he needed this job. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Rosa looked at him, noting the discomfort in his eyes. "I understand," she said. "You're doing your job." As she walked toward the exit, her head held high despite the humiliation burning in her chest, Elena finally found her courage. "This isn't right," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "She didn't do anything wrong." Jason turned to her, eyes narrowing. "Mind your business, Elena. Unless you want to join her." Elena fell silent, her gaze dropping to the floor. The victory in Jason's smirk was palpable as he turned back to Martin. "Some people just don't know their place." Outside, Rosa sat in her car, her hands steady as she made several calls. The first was to her son, Miguel Delgado. "Mijo," she said calmly, "I need you to call an emergency board meeting." "Yes, now, we have a situation that requires immediate attention." The second call was to her assistant, Lucia. "Prepare the documents," she instructed, "and contact the other investors. Tell them it's urgent." What Jason and Martin couldn't have known, what they hadn't bothered to discover, was that Rosa Esperanza Delgado wasn't just any customer. She was Rosa Delgado, founder and CEO of Delgado Tech Innovations, a company that had revolutionized automotive software systems over the past decade. Her company had recently acquired a controlling interest in the luxury automotive group that owned Sierra Motor. This acquisition had been kept quiet, pending a formal announcement. Rosa had wanted to visit the dealerships personally, to experience them as a customer before revealing herself as the new owner, and what an experience it had been. 2 hours later, Rosa returned to Sierra Motor. This time, she wasn't alone. Her son Miguel, the company's CFO, walked beside her. Behind them came Lucia and 3 members of the automotive group's board of directors, all dressed in business attire that communicated authority without saying a word. The atmosphere in the dealership shifted immediately. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as the group entered. Jason, who had been laughing with Martin near the reception desk, faltered when he saw Rosa at the center of this formidable entourage. "Mrs. Delgado," one of the board members said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "on behalf of the entire board, I want to personally apologize for the treatment you received here today." Jason's face drained of color. "Mrs. Delgado," he repeated, his voice barely audible. Rosa approached him, her gaze direct. "Yes, Mr. Kent. Rosa Esperanza Delgado, the woman you and your colleague deemed unworthy of basic courtesy earlier today." Martin stepped forward, his earlier arrogance replaced by desperate obsequiousness. "Mrs. Delgado, there must be some misunderstanding. We always strive to provide excellent service to all our customers. Is that so? Rosa replied, her voice steady. Then perhaps you can explain why you felt it appropriate to mock me, question my ability to afford a vehicle, and ultimately have me removed from the premises. The silence that followed was deafening. One of the board members stepped forward. We've heard the details of what happened here today, and we find it completely unacceptable. This kind of behavior goes against everything our company stands for. Jason's eyes darted around the room as if seeking an escape. We didn't know who you were, and that, Rosa said quietly, is precisely the problem. In your mind, respect is conditional, something to be earned through wealth or status or power. That's not the kind of culture I want in any business associated with my name. Elena, who had been watching from across the showroom, felt tears prick at her eyes. In Rosa's words, she heard echoes of her own grandmother's wisdom. Te valer no depende como te traten los demás. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. Rosa turned to Elena, recognizing the emotion in the young woman's face. You tried to speak up earlier, she said. That took courage. Elena nodded, unable to speak. Rosa addressed the board member. I want both of these men removed from their positions immediately. Their behavior reflects a culture of discrimination that I will not tolerate in any company under my leadership. The senior board member nodded. Consider it done. Rosa then turned to Elena. As for you, Elena, I'd like to offer you a new position. This dealership needs leadership that understands the value of respect and dignity. I believe you possess those qualities. Elena's eyes widened. Me, but I've only been here a few months. Sometimes, Rosa said with a gentle smile, character reveals itself in moments, not years. You showed yours today. 1 month later, Sierra Motors had been transformed. Under Elena's leadership as the new general manager, the dealership had implemented comprehensive diversity training and established new protocols for customer service that emphasized respect and dignity for all clients. Rosa visited occasionally, not as an owner making inspections, but as a mentor. She and Elena would often share coffee in the small office that had once belonged to Jason, discussing strategies for creating a truly inclusive environment. My father never saw his dream of owning a luxury car come true, Rosa told Elena one afternoon. But he taught me something more valuable than any car could ever be. What was that? Elena asked. That dignity isn't something others can give or take from you, it's something you carry inside. Rosa's fingers traced the embroidered patterns on her blouse, patterns similar to those her mother had sewn decades ago. But he also taught me that when you have the power to create change, you have a responsibility to use it. On the wall of Elena's office hung a framed photograph of Rosa's father standing beside an old Chevy in the garage where he had worked for 40 years. Beneath it was a simple inscription in Spanish. El respeto no se compra con dinero. Respect can't be bought with money. Outside, the showroom bustled with a diverse clientele, people who might have been ignored or dismissed under the previous management. Each was treated with the same level of courtesy and attention, regardless of what they wore or how they spoke. And in the center of the showroom, gleaming under perfectly positioned lights, stood the midnight blue luxury sedan that had first caught Rosa's eye, the car her father had dreamed of but never lived to see. Next to it was a small plaque that read the Esperanza model, named in honor of those who taught us that true luxury is found in how we treat one another. Rosa had purchased the car, but she rarely drove it. Instead, she had donated it to a local community college's automotive program, where students, many from backgrounds similar to her own, could learn by working on a vehicle that might otherwise have remained beyond their reach. Because Rosa understood something that Jason and Martin never had, that the most valuable things in life aren't the possessions we acquire, but the dignity with which we treat others along the way. 6 months after Rosa's confrontation at Sierra Motors, the dealership had become the flagship location of the entire automotive group. What was once a cold, unwelcoming space had transformed into a warm environment where customers of all backgrounds felt valued. Elena had proven herself to be an exceptional leader. Under her guidance, sales had increased by 30%, not because the cars were any different, but because the approach to selling them had fundamentally changed. People don't just buy cars, she often reminded her staff during morning meetings. They buy experiences, relationships, and trust. And trust begins with respect. The staff itself had changed dramatically. Where once there had been a homogeneous group of salespeople selected more for their appearance than their character, now stood a diverse team that reflected the community they served. Several spoke Spanish fluently, others knew ASL, and all had been trained to recognize and counter their own unconscious biases. Miguel, Sierra's new head of customer experience, had been a former mechanic who had worked his way through college. His technical knowledge and genuine passion for automobiles made him a favorite among customers who wanted to understand the engineering behind their purchases. Doña Rosa changed everything, he told a new hire during orientation. Before, we were trained to size people up based on what they wore or how they talked. Now we listen first and judge never. On a crisp autumn morning, Rosa parked her modest sedan in the visitor's lot and walked toward the dealership. Today was special. It marked the one-year anniversary of her acquisition of the automotive group, and she had decided to celebrate in a meaningful way. As she entered, she was greeted by name by every staff member she passed. There was no pretense in their warmth. They had come to know her not just as the owner, but as a mentor who took genuine interest in their lives and growth. Elena rushed forward to embrace her. "Everything is ready," she said excitedly. "They'll be arriving any minute." Rosa nodded, her eyes glistening slightly as she surveyed the showroom. Large banners announced the launch of the Sueños Fund, a scholarship program for students from underserved communities pursuing careers in automotive technology, design, or business. "My father would have loved this," she said softly. The doors opened, and a group of 20 high school students entered, accompanied by their teachers. Many came from the same neighborhood where Rosa had grown up, their parents or grandparents immigrants like her own, their dreams just as vibrant, despite the obstacles they faced. Rosa stepped forward, switching effortlessly to Spanish as she welcomed them. "Buenos dias a todos. Welcome to Sierra Motors. Today is not just about cars, it's about possibilities." She shared her story with them, not the sanitized version of success that ignores struggle, but the honest account of a life shaped by both determination and discrimination. "There were many people who told me I didn't belong," she told them, her voice steady and clear. "In classrooms, in boardrooms, and yes, in places like this. But for every person who tried to make me feel small, there was another who reminded me of my worth." She gestured toward the midnight blue luxury sedan, now used for special events and educational purposes. "This car is beautiful, yes. But what's more beautiful is what it represents, the dream my father passed to me, and the dream I now pass to you. Not just to own nice things, but to create spaces where everyone is treated with dignity." As the students toured the facility, learning about career opportunities in everything from engineering to marketing, Rosa found herself standing alone beside the car that had started it all. She ran her fingers lightly over its polished surface, remembering the humiliation she had felt that day and the resolution that had followed. "Abuela," called a voice, interrupting her thoughts. Rosa turned to see her 17-year-old granddaughter, Lucia, approaching with a tablet in hand. Lucia had insisted on attending the event, her interest in the business growing stronger with each passing year. "The first scholarship recipients have been selected," Lucia said, showing Rosa the list. "5 of them want to study mechanical engineering, just like you did." Rosa smiled, placing an arm around her granddaughter's shoulders. In Lucia, she saw echoes of herself at that age, determined, passionate, unwilling to accept the limitations others tried to impose. "What happened to them?" Lucia asked suddenly. "The men who were rude to you that day." Rosa's expression grew thoughtful. "Martin found work at another dealership across state lines. Last I heard, he was still selling cars, though I hope he's learned to see people more clearly." "And the other one, the manager?" "Jason," Rosa said, the name coming back easily despite the time that had passed. "He struggled for a while, couldn't find work in the industry." She paused. 2 months ago he applied for a position in our corporate offices." Lucia's eyes widened. "Did you hire him?" "No," Rosa replied. "But I did meet with him. He apologized, sincerely I think. Said that day had forced him to confront some uncomfortable truths about himself." So what happened? I referred him to one of our community partners, a non-profit that works with corporations on diversity and inclusion training. He's working there now, sharing his story as a cautionary tale. Rosa smiled slightly. Sometimes our greatest mistakes can become our most powerful teachers. They walked together toward the group of students, who were now gathered around Elena as she explained the intricacies of modern electric engines. You know, Rosa said quietly to her granddaughter, success isn't measured by the cars you drive or the office you occupy. I know, Abuela, Lucia replied with a smile. It's measured by the lives you touch and the doors you open for others. Rosa nodded, her heart full. This was her true legacy, not the business empire she had built, or the wealth she had accumulated, but the culture of respect and opportunity she had fostered. As she watched the students, their eyes bright with possibility, their futures unwritten, she knew that her father's dream had been fulfilled in ways he could never have imagined. Not just in the ownership of a luxury car, but in the creation of a world where people like them weren't just tolerated but truly welcomed. "Si se puede," she whispered, echoing the phrase that had sustained her through decades of struggle and triumph. Yes, it can be done. And in that moment, surrounded by the future she had helped create, Rosa Esperanza Delgado felt the full circle of her journey, from the daughter of an immigrant mechanic to a powerful businesswoman who had used that power, not just for herself, but to ensure that others would face fewer locked doors and more open hearts. This was her victory, and it was sweeter than any revenge could ever be.